Hey everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about The Philosophical Life by James Miller. Philosophy used to be, and in minor ways is still used as the butt of the joke. A course of study that don't give you anything tangible in return. But in recent years, because there is more people, so there will of course more people who feels more lost as a result. And in the midst of all this, philosophy started to be on the rise again, specifically Stoicism. The book looks at the life of 12 philosophers, 5 from ancient Greek and 7 from Western modern philosophy. And there are so much you can still learn from these older philosophies. Not just on how to be happy, but even more specific comparison on smaller things. For example, early in the book, Plato discussed the difference between philosopher and sophist. Philosopher is people who teach and live according to their teaching, and sophists are basically debate pros. I think a lot of people nowadays has come out to the realization that debate contents are a waste of time trying to sell themselves as something more than a waste of time. But Plato has called these people cringe since way back in ancient Greek. In the book, he calls them charlatans who was only skillful in debates and nothing else. And there are a lot of this kind of comparison that still rings true even today. And this book went in depth on not just their work, but also on this philosopher's life, by going through not only their books, but also historical records of the time and place they live, the rise and fall of this philosopher and their legacy, so to speak. So as to give more context on where their ideas come from and how they live their life with those ideas in this place. The book starts strong with one of the most interesting stories from Socrates' past, about his pupil Alcibiades. Socrates kept trying to teach him to know himself first, know his flaws. It works at first. Alcibiades even becomes so infatuated with philosophy that he abandoned all his lovers, the lovers that will one day unite to put Socrates on trial. But unfortunately for Alcibiades, his interest in philosophy waned as he aged and became closer to politics. Instead of studying wisdom, he chose to chase after fame and power to the point of making a lot of mistakes for his self-interest that he was chased to other countries and died in Asia Minor. The book also tried to dismantle a lot of the dramatization this character have. While Socrates is known for his philosophy for good reason, he is still flawed in many ways. At the end of his life during his trial, he did not show the humility and restraint he teaches to others. Even Plato is most known student say that he is showing his arrogance, and the juries at his trial who first think he is innocent change their mind to say he is in fact guilty, not innocent. Which is kind of funny to imagine with some of these jurors saying, "Hey guys, I think he might be innocent." And then Socrates goes, "I am the best, you should fit me." So the jurors went, "Okay, fuck this guy, guilty." A lot of people often miss that the version of Socrates they read are the idealized version of Socrates and not the historical accurate one. Even Plato and Aristotle are aware that they're writing the idealized version of him. And while their teaching and study is still a better read than modern self-help books, we still need some awareness that they're not the main character. They're just people trying their best to be good people. Plato is even considered to be a demigod on some of this story about him with his mother giving him a virgin birth after she dreamed of Apollo. But of course from Plato we got not just where he was born but also the life he lived before and after he met Socrates, the events that led to him building the school and the political strife that he got into. There's Diogenes of Sinope the cynic, a man so unknown and so famous at the same time that he is more mythical than he is historical. His brief encounter with Alexander the Great and his rivalry with Plato, and the life he lived on the barrel makes him one of the most interesting Greek philosophers. There's Aristotle, the man who is also known as the philosopher. After Alexander the Great became more paranoid and cruel that at 33, Aristotle also died soon after losing his larger supporter. And soon his rival, including even Epicurus, tried to paint him as a bad philosopher who had abandoned his Socratic lifestyle. Then he died during his exile, all alone. And you will think that with a book that is a deep dive into 12 philosopher figures, it wouldn't have the same care and attention put into all of them. But no, all 12 of the philosophers mentioned in this book have the same amount of research put into them. Not just the ones from ancient Greek, which is already impressive enough even with just them, but the author also put the same attention to people considered to be modern philosophers like Kant and Nietzsche. All of them have such a different life, different time and place, and put more simply, different lifestyle. Socrates lived a more aesthetic life, Plato opened a school, Diogenes lived in a barrel, Aristotle worked with one of the most famous Greek kings, Seneca is one of the famous Roman philosophers, and perhaps the most controversial being the figure who is titled Friend of the Emperor, while the Emperor is Nero, who is basically the kid from Toy Story 1 if he becomes the Emperor. There's Augustine, the theologist that has famously crossed his religious life and his philosophy life, and he teaches that being a religious person does not automatically mean that you're a good person. There is Montaigne, who in a time where Catholics and Protestants was killing each other in the name of religion, become a voice of reason to return to philosophy and question your own conduct before forcing them to other people. Then there's Descartes, a philosopher who's at the forefront of science and the Enlightenment movement, who is known for his saying, "I think, therefore I am," and all during one of the ages of church censorship with people who disagree with the church can end up like Galileo or worse. There's Rousseau, perhaps the most insufferable philosophist from the 12 figures in this book that have had children with women he refused to marry and then sent their children to their death and his attempt at redeeming himself. Then there's Kant, a man considered to be Germany's king of philosophers during his lifetime, but most of his life were under government control before he lost his mind because of dementia during his last moment. Then we go to America to learn about Emerson, the person who popularized individualism and critical thinking with his thinking man philosophy. But because it has such a short slogan-like title, a lot of people don't read his work since they can just chant his slogan. Lastly, we got Nietzsche, who unfortunately did become known as the face of emo at one point, because in one of his 14 books, all with thousands of words, he said if you gaze into the abyss gazes back at you. And just like that, the author traced back how one person influenced the next, and by piecing the historical life of this philosopher and their teaching, not only did the author demystify these figures, but it also strengthened the nature of why philosophy matters in the first place, the pursuit of good by questioning your truth. So the book feels like it's putting the missing puzzle piece by comparing their words and their deeds and see if anything match and what don't match. And from there we can see that the teaching of these people is less of who they are, but who they aim to be, and their life is a struggle to reach those ideals. They are imperfect, but they give their all to try to be. They question themselves more than they complain about other people's conduct, and both from their life and death there are lessons to learn from, since that's how they live their life, seeking wisdom and knowledge. Let me share 2 quotes from the book that I really like. After undertaking a comparative study of the surviving Socratic conversation by Plato and all the others, one modern scholar felt able to enumerate only a handful of characteristics exemplified by the Socrates depicted by more than one Socratic author. Among the common characteristics were moral toughness and physical stamina, a love for theorizing, the ability to produce reason for what one believes, an interest in distinguishing knowledge and opinion, and an appreciation for errors and impatient friendship as motive force in a shared quest for wisdom. And only Socrates demanded of his followers that they jettison traditional certainties and strive toward a rational unity of word and deed. To achieve such a goal implicitly requires that one gain an accurate understanding of oneself, that one self-consciously uphold a set of beliefs about the best way to live that is consistent and reasonable, and also that one's conduct comport with these beliefs. Meeting all these requirements is especially tough for anyone committed, as Socrates is in the Apology, to a way of life based on a continuing examination of one's core belief. And by looking at the contrast between the internal life and the external life of this philosopher, we get to learn more from them. And not only that, by tracing an arc through the 12 figures, we can see how Socratic challenge of knowing thyself and the unexamined life is not worth living still continues. Not just through the 11 other figures in this book that has taken that challenge after Socrates has opened his Pandora box, but also through us. What have we learned from these figures? And what have we learned from ourselves? Did we still grow as a person not just externally but also internally? This is a great book both as a historical record and as a philosophy record. I highly recommend them. And I give this a 4.25. What do you think? Are you gonna read it? Did I miss anything? Leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it.